All right, today I want to look at National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien stating, I don't think there's systemic racism in U.S. police forces. So this is a problem because this isn't just some person's opinion. This is National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien. So what he says and what he thinks translate into policy, national policy. They translate into recommendations that get made to Trump. This is a powerful man that's going to decide how things move going forward. And he is standing up in the current situation and saying, I don't think there's systemic racism. So we're going to watch the video in just a minute. But, the problem with this is that we have a side that is just totally unwilling to listen to what's going on. Is it at all reasonable to think that this is a few bad apples and that we don't have systemic racism? No. We've been talking about this for years, and in a larger picture, we've been talking about this for decades. The reason it's coming, one of the many reasons it's coming out more in recent years, is because we all have cameras now, so we're just seeing it more. In the old days when people were murdered, it just came up to, oh, well, he was resisting arrest, he wouldn't get in the car, things went bad, didn't mean for it to happen. Now we're seeing it on video. Okay. Now clearly, this conversation always breaks down into one that is impossible to talk about because people take these completely unreasonable points of view, like we're about to hear, where he says, "Oh, it's just a few bad apples, right?" And most police officers are okay. Like, here's the thing: no one is arguing that every single police officer out there is racist and evil and trying to murder people. No one is saying that. There are many police officers out there who are amazing individuals. They found a calling in trying to protect people and trying to do the right things and bring justice to our society. Many police officers are like that. But this is not a one-time story. This keeps coming up and happening again and again. And you can't really look at the situation and say, oh yeah, it's this. We just keep seeing this over and over again, but it's not systemic. It's not part of the system. Oh, this was just a bad apple. This was just an individual who didn't have the right training, right? It's nonsense. It's part of the system that there are numerous individuals throughout the country who are hurting people, murdering people in the streets because of their color. Right? It's totally ridiculous. Let's take a look at the video and see let's remember, the whole time he's talking, let's remember, this isn't just some guy with an opinion. This is National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien, okay? This man's opinions translate into policy for our country.
I want to ask you about the police, because George Floyd is hardly the only unarmed black American killed recently by police. Do you think systemic racism is a problem in law enforcement agencies in the United States?
No, I don't think there's systemic racism. I think 99.9% of our law enforcement officers are great Americans, and many of them are African American, Hispanic, Asian. They're working in the toughest neighborhoods. They've got the hardest jobs to do in this country, and I think they're amazing, great Americans, and they're my heroes. But you know what? There are some bad apples in there, and there are some bad cops that are racist, and there are cops that are, maybe don't have the right training, and there's some that are just bad cops, and they need to be rooted out because there's a few bad apples that are giving law enforcement a terrible.
See, we're hearing the same talking points we hear every time. It's just a few bad apples. It's just a few racist individuals. We're seeing this kind of thing happen so frequently. This is not just a couple bad people here and there. This is part of a larger system. This needs to be handled. And right now, the condition that the country is in, this is not helping. This doesn't help when we have looting and we have protests, and what our government can come out and do is basically not listen, not hear what the protesters are trying to say, and just say, oh, well, it's just a couple racist people, it's just a couple bad actors. If you are seeing people like you being murdered on television, and then you go out and protest about it, what you don't want to hear is that, well, this was just one individual. We keep seeing this. We keep seeing these news stories of people shot in their vehicles, shot while they're jogging, crushed, having their neck crushed when they're already handcuffed and have cops on top of them. This is not just one bad individual. There were 4 of them standing there. There were 4 cops involved in this. Right? So this is one bad apple. This is one racist individual. This is a systemic problem. And you need to admit that and find a way to move forward with it and say, you know what? There is a problem. What are we going to do to fix this? Okay? What are we going to do to change this problem that we currently have in this country?
a terrible name, and there's no doubt that there's some racist police. I think they're the minority. I think they're the few bad apples, and we need to root them out. But I'll tell you, I'm just so proud of the way our law enforcement professionals are protecting us and handling this situation with.
Yeah, because again, right, are there good police officers out there? Of course there are. Of course there are people who are doing an outstanding job, and there are heroes, right? So we're not trying to say 100% of cops bad. There's a large number of cops out there who are good, but there's also a large number of cops out there who are doing bad things. And you go, oh, well, there's a few cases a year that we see. Yeah, you're seeing the ones that are caught on tape, right? So there clearly are a sizable number of individuals working for the government, right? These are government police individuals. They're basically the hand of the government to enforce the laws, and they are out there murdering people. Okay? So yeah, there are great police officers out there. There also are some who are doing very bad things to people, right? And it's not one here and there, right? There clearly is a systemic issue.
With restraint we love our law enforcement, but we do have to get rid of those that are like the dirty cop that killed George Floyd. I mean, we need to get rid of those people. By the way, where were the local prosecutors and where was the police commissioner? That guy, apparently, I'm told he had a long record of this sort of conduct.
It's a good question.
Why was he still on the force?
Yeah, he brings up a good point, which I think partially is a shot at Amy Klobuchar, which is fine. I don't have a problem with anyone taking shots at Amy Klobuchar, but she's the one who declined to prosecute some of his earlier charges. So this is in some ways, let's push this off on the Democrats. But at the same time, he brings up a good point. Why weren't these things handled earlier? Maybe it's because we have a systemic racist problem. Right? It sort of goes to back up the very point he's trying to make the opposite of, which is, yeah, there's a systemic problem because when people make complaints against a police officer, nothing's done about it, and then they go on to murder people. So you're kind of making my point for me, which is there's a systemic racism problem in police forces. Again, I'm not making the case that every police officer is like this. Many aren't. But there are also sizable pockets where people are bad actors like this. And it's not one here and there. It's enough to be a problem where 4 people stood around and either participated directly in or helped aid the death of a man who was no danger to anybody. So this just goes to the point I've been trying to make. We need to have a conversation. And if you're going to have a conversation, one of the things you have to do is listen to people. So you can look at the situation and say, hey, they're burning down buildings, unacceptable. They're out in the streets, they're protesting at night. Yeah, and we need to listen to that, and we need to hear what can we do about this? There clearly is a problem, right? There clearly is a problem going on here, and we need to listen to people. And then, what's been asked for, before this broke out was something meaningful to take back to the community so that they know things are going to change, right? For decades, we've been doing this. Yeah, we need to have a real conversation about race in this country and not something that's easy to brush off and say, well, they burned down a police force, so it's their own fault. Conversation over. There's a reason that these protests are becoming violent, and it's because people are not being heard. They are not being listened to. We need to listen to what people have to say and then make an honest effort at fixing things legitimately so that American citizens don't have to be worried about being murdered in the streets by government police forces. Okay? Thanks for checking out the video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can get all the new content as it becomes available, and we'll see you in the future.